As a fitness professional, you know the joy of helping others, and you know it's more than just fitness. We're training the whole person. Wellness coaching provides expertise that goes beyond fitness and nutrition. It's a holistic approach to helping others become their best selves while reaching their goals. To us, there's no greater joy than that. Join the fitness leader. Become a fitness leader. Become a certified wellness coach. Go to nasm.org/wellness.
You're listening to the Mindful Drinking Podcast with Derek Brown on the NASM Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Mindful Drinking Podcast, where we share tips and information that you can use to drink more mindfully. I'm your host, Derek Brown, and I'm an award-winning bartender, an NASM certified wellness coach, and the author of Mindful Mixology, a comprehensive guide to no and low alcohol cocktails. Now, you might, if you've watched previous episodes, you know that we're in a slightly different location, and this is our first in-studio guest, who I'm going to get to in just a moment. And I'm very excited because we're at Tales of the Cocktail in New Orleans. So that is one of the largest cocktail conferences in the world. And there's been an incredible amount of events around no and low alcohol cocktails and mindful drinking so far. And so I knew that this particular person, Hilary Sheinbaum, was on her way to do a seminar tomorrow, which we're going to tell you about in a minute. And I just had to speak with you and make sure that we had this opportunity, because I definitely wanted you on the Mindful Drinking Podcast. So I'm going to go ahead and, with no further ado, and introduce Hilary. She is a journalist and the author of Dry Challenge and a new workbook called Going Dry, a practical guide to drinking less and living more. And that is available September 3rd.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, that was an amazing intro. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. And so the first thing I want to start out by saying, because there's lots to talk about,
Yes.
is how did you get started going dry yourself?
Well, it's a long story, but the
Yeah.
short of it is, it was an accident.
Okay.
So I'm going to take you back to 2016 when I was a red carpet reporter for weekly gossip magazines.
Okay.
And my job primarily took place at night.
Wow.
So I would sign in for the red carpets at about 5 p.m. And
Mhm.
sometimes my evenings would end at 2 a.m.
Oh.
because I would attend the carpet, the event, and the after party.
Mhm.
And I was interviewing everyone from Brad Pitt to the Kardashians to every housewife on TV. And during the day, because all of my friends had corporate jobs, I picked up freelancing gigs writing about wine, beer, and spirits.
Okay.
Yeah. And this was for publications like USA Today and Eater and a local New York publication called AM New York.
Mhm.
So I was very invested in the cocktail scene in New York City and even interviewing celebrities about their drinking.
Yeah.
And so that was my life. And I was a 20-something, dating, going on first dates and drinking and just like living my best life. But at the end of 2016, I actually had dinner with a friend
Mhm.
and he asked me what my New Year's resolutions were, which I still to this day think that you don't have to wait till January 1st to, make new plans or, commit to something.
That's right.
So I kind of, it was just like, ugh, that's silly. And he mentioned this thing called Dry January. And I completely changed the subject because it just did not fit into my lifestyle or my job.
Yeah.
And, but it stuck with me. And so for a week later, I was at a New Year's Eve party and I had a glass of champagne in one hand and I was texting my friend in the other. And I initiated a bet, which was that we were both going to try to do a Dry January. And the person who lost would buy the winner dinner.
Okay.
Anywhere in New York. And if you've been to New York,
That can get expensive.
it's
yeah.
not cheap.
Yeah.
So, I had a lot riding on that. And long story short, as cliche as it sounds, it changed my life and I ended up winning the bet. He lost. But from there, I learned so much about myself. And again, it sounds so corny, but it's so true. It changed my career.
Yeah.
And to this day, my friend Al will not bet me anything ever again.
Where
But
did you go?
we went, it's now closed, which
Oh,
makes me so
man.
sad. But we actually went and had the tasting menu at Momofuku Co., which
Yep, I've been.
was a pretty penny
Yep.
and paid for by Al. So thanks, buddy. But I dedicated my book to him. So I say that we both won in the end.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, that's a big part of what I hope we can talk about today is temporary abstinence challenges, right?
Yes.
So sometimes called temporary abstinence months too. And
Mhm.
so even though, well, we're in July, but this is going to air in August. So dry July has become a temporary abstinence challenge. In fact, it's become somewhat perennial, right? It's like dry January, forget it February,
Sober
mindful March, sober
September.
September.
Yeah. Everything.
So at this point, it's really you can pick it up whenever and do it, right?
Of course.
So will you share a little bit about temporary abstinence challenges and quote unquote dry challenges?
Absolutely. So first of all, it is not for people who are seeking, recovery programs.
Mhm.
It's really for social drinkers who are just looking to cut back and change their drinking patterns.
Right.
And so, like you said, you can start at any time. It doesn't even have to be the first of the month, but in essence, you are giving up all forms of wine, beer, spirit, no shots, no like tiny little low alcohol things. If you're really strict about it, you'd give
Mhm.
up like rum raisin ice cream. I don't know if that counts for some people. But I think it's really about evaluating your drinking habits and seeing what suits you and also just exploring other ways to socialize and have fun and relax without alcohol.
Yeah, I think that's really important because a lot of us we're not necessarily in a place where we need to go to a 12-step program, right?
Right.
We just need to check in with ourselves and say, are we drinking the way that we want to drink? And I think that that's a huge part of it. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, how do you think, I mean, because I guess ultimately not everybody's going to leave that never drinking again. Some people will drink, some people will be sober. It really depends on their own experience. So how
Mhm.
has your experience gone with that?
So the first dry January, again, 2017, I personally thought that I had a lot of anxiety and poor sleep habits due to my like
Mhm.
chaotic on the go job. I mean, when celebrity news breaks, it's typically at a really unfortunate time when you're
Yeah.
like trying to plan something else or maybe you have a date and all of a sudden you are locked at your computer or you are jet setting to like the next awards show.
Wow.
So I think that for me, just not having that consistency in my mind was causing like sleep deprivation.
Uh-huh.
When in reality, when I gave up alcohol for that first month, especially, I noticed that I went from sleeping, 4 to 5 hours a night to sleeping 8 straight hours.
Right.
And I always use that example because everybody has had poor quality sleep versus like the best sleep of your life. And
Mhm.
you just feel so much better. Like your body is rested, your mind is rested, you're happier, your mood is elevated, you're just like a nicer person. So that was a big one for me. And I really think that, if you are consistently having, even if it's one glass of wine, a couple times a week, I think that really peeling back and starting at zero can really show you how that is affecting your day-to-day life.
That's right. I mean, we get stuck in a habit. It
Yeah.
sounds like that's where you were at. And sometimes it's out of peer pressure as
Mhm.
well. Other people are drinking around you. Sometimes it's out of just conformity. It's just normal and natural, like at this point, or feels natural.
Yeah.
It's not, in fact, natural, but you're waiting at a bar, you want to order something. And that's
Right.
why one of the great things is there has been this exciting movement of no and low alcohol drinks. And
Mhm.
so I know that you often share some of the drinks that you have and talk about no and low as well. So do you enjoy no and low alcohol cocktails? We're here in New Orleans. Cocktails is a big part of it.
Yeah, it's funny. The first time I ever came to New Orleans was actually with my grandparents, and it was like a completely sober trip. My
Okay.
grandma was like, "Do you want a martini?" And I was like, "I'm good." And that was in college. It's funny, but just was not, the trip for me drinking with my grandparents. But given that, like, I've had a sober experience in New Orleans, so I'm not worried.
Okay,
I
great.
mean, there is so much to do here. There's so much culture. But yeah, I'm not sober myself. I'm very
Mhm.
open about that. And I'm like obsessed with non-alcoholic beverages because I think they're amazing. Like
Right.
there's so many options and, yeah, it's just so much fun to be like, hey, try this. It's not gonna have those negative effects that alcohol is,
Right. And sometimes might
linked
even
to.
have positive effects. I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
I've been drinking a lot of non-alcoholic cocktails
Mhm.
since I've been here, and some low alcohol cocktails too. And there's some that have, energy, uh, you know, uh, sort of substances that promote energy, and some that promote relaxation and that sort of thing. And I think that that's really great. Adaptogenic cocktails
Yeah.
and neurotropic cocktails, and
Have you tried Domo yet?
ah,
Oh, it's a new canned cocktail and it has 19 functional ingredients,
wow,
which I was like, that's impossible. But then I tried it and it was actually good. And yeah, it's amazing to me that obviously, people are more aware of what they're consuming now,
right,
but certainly like if you can add that positive boost in any
yeah.
form, I think it's a great thing.
Right, because it's not really about what you're missing,
Right.
it's what you're adding, and that's really cool, I think.
Yes.
Because that's part of, and we're gonna get into your workbook and the
Yeah.
practical things you can do, but I think that for me, has been one of the practical things, is stop thinking about not drinking and start thinking about the exciting things that I can drink.
Yes.
And so I think that that's a really important part of it. So, um, let's start with the seminar. You're doing a seminar about no and low alcohol
Yes.
cocktails. So can you share some insights from that?
Yes, I won't give too much away, although this is airing after that,
That's
so
true.
it's fine. Spoiler alerts don't count. So tomorrow I will be speaking about non-alcoholic beverages on menus.
Yeah.
And part of what I do with my organization, which is called goingdry.co, so
Mhm.
it's easy to remember.
Yeah.
Is part of it is that I help non-alcoholic beverage brands get onto menus.
Mhm.
So one of the partners that I recently worked with was the Four Seasons in Jackson Hole.
Mhm.
So I just think it's obviously important for people to have options and have
Yes.
that menu to look at and point at. And I always give the example of even if people have those options available, if they are not in front of their customer, they're not going to order them.
That's right.
The same thing, like, you wouldn't go into an Italian restaurant and order, like, a chicken parm if it wasn't on
Mhm.
the menu. So, we're gonna talk about everything from, how to build a menu to, being more inclusive in your restaurant or your bar, your hotel, and things like that.
That's
So, I'm
amazing.
excited.
I look forward to it. You're listening to the Mindful Drinking Podcast. I'm your host, Derek Brown, and we're talking to Hilary Sheinbaum, who is the author of The Dry Challenge and a workbook that's coming out called Going Dry, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. And we have been talking about no and low alcohol cocktails, which is something I really love. Hilary is doing a great seminar tomorrow that I'm going to be in the audience for. And so
Yay.
hopefully I'll share more details. But I think one of the points that you just made is really good. There are studies which seem very obvious. Sometimes when you have one of those studies, you're like, okay, of course. But it was a study in which they provided more options for people to drink non-alcoholic drinks.
Mhm.
And lo and behold, what did they do? Drink more non-alcoholic drinks. So I think a lot of people out there, one of the numbers that I got from the IWSR, which is they do research on wine and spirits,
Mhm.
was talking about in 2023 that over 50% of Americans want to moderate or change their relationship with alcohol.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And so that's a big part of it. And you mentioned that you yourself are not sober, but drink. And I think that that's a big part of it. A lot of people out there who are what we call substituters, right?
Mhm.
They're switching back and forth between no and low alcohol cocktails and sometimes full strength cocktails based on whatever they're doing, whatever they're feeling.
Yep.
And I learned a phrase that the British contingent, because there's some British people here that I was talking about mindful drinking with. Camille Vidal is one of them. There's a term called zebra striping. Have you heard this one?
No, I love that, though.
On their
It's like
terminology.
off and on, off and on?
Exactly. Well, basically, you're switching back and forth between no and low.
I like
So
that.
I think that's a really cool part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, like, in general or in a night?
In a night, in
Yeah.
general, I think it can be either one. But I think that's, one of the practical ways to address, drinking more mindfully. So let's just get right into that.
Yeah.
Tell me, like, about your workbook. Like, what are some of the things that you found that are useful for people to drink more mindfully?
Yeah. So I definitely think non-alcoholic beverages are, definite. I've had so much fun with them, and I think that they're practical, and now they're more widespread than ever. I also think that, things like recruiting a friend and having a support system are so important
Right.
because, if I hadn't made my bet, like, would I have stuck with it? I don't know. But I still had, somebody who was available for me to vent to when
Yeah.
I felt like I was being singled out or, make plans with. And so I think that's a big part of it too, is like just having kind of things to look forward to that are social activities that are part of your normal um day-to-day life, but like extracting the alcohol from it.
Yeah.
And I think also, you don't have to you don't have to run a marathon, which is something I ended up doing. And I think a lot of people who give up alcohol, it's funny, like in the running community, there are so many people, but
That's right.
yeah, I don't know what that transition is. I should do more research on that. But I really think that, you don't have to make like every other change in your life. It can be just, one day at a time, one thing at a time, and just kind of take it easy like that.
I love that. Yeah, because I don't think you have to just always jump into it. Although a temporary abstinence challenge is sort of jumping into it. So, what would you suggest people do to prepare for that? Let's say that they're doing sober October.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a
Sober September.
abstinent August.
Sure.
But I just coined that term. PM. You can't use it without paying me. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay. So I think this is not what I did the first year, but definitely in years that followed. First year I had still, wine bottles like out and in the fridge and alcohol, in my apartment, which was a steady reminder that like I wasn't drinking. So I think
Yeah.
that could help if you are, reducing. I tell some people if you're really, really committed, you can, toss it down the drain. Otherwise, just put it away
Right.
so that you're not like staring at it all the time. Again, like making plans in advance with friends, really taking the reins in your social circle and being like, guys, let's do this. Like, being the organizer of events, I think is really helpful.
Yeah.
And yeah, just again, like trying non-alcoholic beverages, finding things that make you happy. That sounds really corny, but it's so true. I have so much fun just like, going to non-alcoholic bottle shops and going to tastings and mixing things in my own kitchen. So I think it really depends on the person, but I think those are some easy tips.
That's excellent. And I got to tell you that I also do the exact same thing when I talk about happiness. Then I'll follow it up with, that sounds corny, but I think I want to stop that because
Yeah.
happiness is like really important. to our life,
Yeah.
right. And there's different ways to approach it. Right. I mean, there's definitely the sense of the immediate happiness. And that's one of the things that alcohol can do for us. Right. There is
Yeah.
no doubt that it can change. It can be mood changing and mood altering. But there's a different type of happiness, that kind of flourishing, where you feel like that running can bring. I mean, there's this statistic that I learned recently about Gen Z that there are a lot, they're reducing drinking so much.
Significantly.
And a lot of them are reporting that they would prefer the high that you get from a workout to alcohol. And I think that's really amazing. So that you mentioned that about running too.
Yeah. And what's funny is so a lot of the events that I do, especially in New York, are paired with workouts. And that's honestly just because that's what I enjoy doing. So I recently had this workout event at Barry's Boot Camp in New York City and had 50, sober, curious individuals participating, and they were able to try 2 different beverage brands afterwards. We had a little food, we had a little swag. So everyone was really happy. But that really just spurred from the fact that I enjoy going to Barry's Boot Camp. And I was like, this is the plan. This is what we're doing. If you guys want to come, like, it's going to be a good time. And it was awesome. There were so many first timers too, who were like, this terrifies me, but I'm going to try it. And then they came out the other side being like, I'm so glad I did that. And,
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
It seems like that's a big part of it. Because here at Tales of the Cocktail, they have this daily run club. Now, I don't enjoy running. This is a bad audience to be talking about that too,
sorry.
because ultimately this is a, audience that some of them are part of the cocktail crowd. Some of them are fitness professionals and some of them are wellness coaches. Many of them probably run, but I don't really enjoy running, but I did watch the run club go by and they seemed very happy. And I really like this idea because it's not just the endorphins from running, it's not just the positive benefits you get from that,
Mhm.
positive emotions. It's the connection that you feel to other people. And it sounds like that's what you are organizing with your fitness camp. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, not all of the events are fitness based. I just happen to, most of them are, but
Mhm.
we'll do like a non-alcoholic cocktail happy hour at
Right.
like a rooftop bar. I always want to like do things where people can participate. So, sometimes working out isn't for everyone and that's
Yeah.
fine too. I'm trying to think what else. I did like a thing at a bathhouse recently.
Okay.
So
Like a Russian bathhouse?
no, it's not quite a Russian bathhouse.
I don't know why I think of
I
Russian
know
bathhouse.
it sounds a little like, whoa, what are you doing here, Hilary? It's called Air, AIRE.
Yeah. Okay.
It's in Tribeca in Manhattan, and yeah, it was just like a nice, relaxing morning where
Very
people
cool.
could like sip their non-alcoholic beverage and relax. And yeah, of course, it's just opening people's eyes to things, within their destination or their location that they can partake in.
That's awesome. But now
Yeah.
I think about the Russian
I'm sorry.
bathhouse. I also think of them like old Russian men drinking tea too. So I'm like, this is actually, I would
This
like
is
to
the
do that.
upgraded. This is the 2.0. This is the chic non-alcoholic beverage bathhouse experience.
That's amazing. So with your workbook, what else can we expect to find? I know that you probably talk about journaling and intentionality and stuff like that. Or
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
And also like recording your feelings and
Okay.
and kind of, taking data, and you can do that however you like. I wear a whoop and I'm obsessed with it.
Mhm.
It's like another limb for me. I'm like constantly checking it, maybe too much.
Yeah.
But I think it's important because sometimes you just forget, you might remember how you felt yesterday or at the beginning of something, but really seeing a transition throughout, I think is important
Yeah.
to show improvement, or maybe not, but I think more likely that
Yeah.
you'll see, something good. I think the other thing is I have a few like notable people who one wrote the foreword. So
Okay.
I'm excited for her to share her story. Her name's Lauren Bostick,
Okay.
and she is a podcaster, an entrepreneur. She has a beauty brand called The Skinny Confidential,
Okay.
which was originally a blog. And she is so inspiring and amazing. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's at the very front of the book. And yeah, some other notable people, women that I look up to, who have also, tried out the sober, curious lifestyle. So
That's really cool.
yeah, I'm excited.
That's awesome. And so it comes out in September 3rd. So
Yes,
you must be really excited about that,
I
just
am.
to see the impact of it. Because I think that like we're seeing a lot more proliferation of books and card decks and workbooks and that sort of thing. And I really like that, the interactivity of what you're doing too, because I think it's really important. I like how you talked about recording yourself,
Yeah.
because sometimes like I talk about journaling as a really important tool that you can use to drink more mindfully, right? But some people don't like to write,
Yeah.
and that's fair, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they just don't like, they don't do that. And so maybe they can do like, I suggest they do Pinterest boards, or recording yourself is a really great
Totally.
solution too.
I mean, it's kind of up to you. Even in the dry challenge, I noted that like you can make a vlog, you can like hit the record button on your phone, you could do it in your notes app. I know in my notes app is absolutely chaotic. It's like it literally had like the address to this podcast studio followed by like somebody I need to follow up with for a work email, and then like some other notes about making like doctor's appointments. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But yes, you can do it however you like is my point.
Yeah, I think that and that really goes to the heart of all of this with the temporary abstinence challenges. It's really up to you.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I tell people you don't even actually have to give up alcohol every single day. Do you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, it's a totally like pick your own adventure. I
Mhm.
think a lot of times people will say to me, listen, I really want to do a dry January, but my birthday is in the middle of the month. I
Right.
want to have a glass of wine, or, I have a wedding or some
Mhm.
kind of celebration. And I always say, this is your challenge or your month to do as you please. I think it's just a matter of like, for a lot of people, even if they don't have it planned, I say like one drink is okay. One night of drinking is okay. Just like
Yeah.
finish off strong, like, continue on.
Yeah, there's this bias that when we like break a thing that we're doing, right? Like we go
Yeah.
1 week into it and all of a sudden we're like, "Oh, I drank by accident." Right? You just go out, you're not thinking about it.
Right.
and you order one and you drink, you're like, oh, that's it. It's over.
Mm-hmm.
That's the end of it. I'm never going to get. But I think that it's really important to just treat that as one-off, right? Like
Yeah.
that's one thing that happened. But also, as you're saying, like if you have events like a friend coming to town or wedding, that's fine too. It's not a religion.
It's not about being
Right.
perfect.
Yeah.
I think that's like also a big stressor for people. Is
Yeah.
like being 100%. And
That brings up something I really wanted to ask you about, because you had mentioned that your friend was sort of someone who helped you along the way.
yes.
And I think that I feel that this is probably the case. It sounds like that person probably wasn't very judgmental about
We're talking
drinking.
about Al.
Yeah.
It's so funny because he ended up actually completing a dry January a couple
Okay.
years later. So we applaud him for that.
Good job, Al.
But even if he didn't, it would be fine. Al, at that point in my life, Al has since moved to Florida, so we don't see each other as much. And he was always like down for anything. He was my plus one to a lot of these really cool, fun events.
Yeah.
And he like, I would be like, oh, let's do this. And he'd be like, great, let's do it. Like just easy, like non-judgmental, like up for whatever.
Mhm.
And so it was just kind of like a perfect time, I think, in both of our lives that we were like, okay, like let's do something. Like we don't have any crazy plans. And yeah, it just kind of worked out perfectly.
Yeah.
But
That's great. Because I
yeah.
think it's really important, I think, to have, if you have that partner, if you have that friend in goal setting, to make sure it's somebody who's not going to needle you and,
Yeah.
be judgmental and make you feel bad for, breaking one night or what have you. Because I mean, I think that's, ultimately, again, it's not a religion. It's not about purity. And maybe if that's what appeals to you, if maybe you are at the heart an extremist and you want to make sure, okay, I won't touch it. I won't have, breath mints that have alcohol in them or anything or
Right.
whatever, like a piece of hamburger buns technically have like 0.3% alcohol.
Oh,
So
I didn't know
no
that.
hamburger buns.
I learned something new today.
I think that's a bit, yeah. Well,
I mean, like ripe bananas too, right?
That's
Like
right, yeah.
any fruit, really. Wow, hamburger buns.
because that might be a concern for people. They might say some of these non-alcoholic products have 0.5%
Yeah.
alcohol, but we have a few grams of alcohol in our gut every day,
Right.
that have nothing to do with it, just the body produces it.
Right.
So considering that, like, it's not that we should never have alcohol, unless, of course, that's important to your recovery, right?
Yeah.
Like we often make that distinction between people who are mindful drinkers and people who are in recovery. And those are people, of course, who need or would reach out for therapeutic help or medical help to
Right.
help them quit alcohol, which makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. And
It's a continuum,
yes.
but so is light and dark.
Yes.
So, so that's awesome. So what else are you working on right now? I know that you do a lot out there in the world of mindful drinking and sober curiosity. So share a little bit about what's next.
What can I tell you? Without giving too much away. So the book is coming out September 3rd and it's going dry. And then we will, and by we, I mean me.
Yeah.
It's me. There'll be a few more events this year, more hotel menus that I'm working on. So I'm very excited about that. And yeah, just some other things that I can't quite talk about yet, but a lot that's coming down the pipeline. It's very
Okay.
exciting.
Well, I will be looking out for all this, but listen, I have avoided this entire time asking any questions about celebrities because it sounds like you've had a lot of interactions. So
yeah,
I just want to
it.
leave a little space.
No, go for it.
For any interesting celebrity stories.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I mean, this is so like on brand, but off brand. So my first big interview was for Us Weekly.
Okay.
And it was with the cast of The Jersey Shore.
Okay.
And over the course of like the past, I want to say like 15, almost 14 years, I guess, 15 years. I've seen them kind of at different points in their lives, right? So the first time was when they were filming the second season, the first time in Miami, and I spent an entire day with them at their home and then at a nightclub. Not
risk.
Yeah, it was during the day. They were like doing a photo shoot. I wasn't like partying with them, but it's interesting. And then there was at some point in time, it must have been like 7 or 8 years ago. I have a photo somewhere of me taking shots with like Pauly D. And so anyway, I just think it's so funny to me because it's like that was such a core part of my life. And me then would have like seen me now and been like, this doesn't make sense. And now like me here, like it makes sense to me because I've obviously come a long way, but the two together, I think are a little bit shocking to people. Sometimes people will still like look up articles that I wrote from way back when and they'll say like, do you want to write about my like, client's vodka or,
Right.
bourbon? And I'm like, respectfully, no. It's just, but it's there's lots of stuff like that.
But there has been this like proliferation of celebrity alcohol and actually even non-alcoholic
Yes.
drinks that you have Katy Perry and Lewis Hamilton, who's
Yeah.
a F1 Formula driver, and a lot of people who are out there promoting non-alcoholic drinks. So that's kind of a sea change to see that it's not a big business because it's still very small in some ways, but it's growing to that size,
I think it's amazing. I think there'll probably be more and more. And every day, I see it myself, and also people will send me articles of, the latest celebrity who has talked about not drinking for 6 months or, declaring their sobriety. And I just think it's great. I mean, the more people who are doing it, the more people who will be, impacted and look into, what their drinking habits entail. So
That's great.
yeah.
Well, you're listening to the Mindful Drinking Podcast, and my name is Derek Brown, and we are now a celebrity gossip show. That's what we've
Yes.
turned to. And so I want to just share a little bit more, and then we can wrap up here. But I think that one of the things that I know, so I used to own a bar in Washington D.C. called the Columbia Room, and it's no longer there, but it was a great bar, and we had lots of celebrities come through there, and I feel like about 50% of them just don't drink anymore.
Interesting.
So a lot of and some that I've seen, and I'm not going to name it.
I was going to ask you. I
is,
just shared my gossip.
well, as a bartender in DC, you learn not to say things about people who come into your
That's
bar
fair.
because you don't live very long in DC. Not literally you won't
I'm
live
like, is that a
long,
threat?
but you won't keep your job for very long.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there were lots of instances where there would be a celebrity, very well-known ones, that would just get hammered at the bar.
Yeah.
And then you'd be like, wow, that's not pretty.
Mhm.
And then you say, oh, now they're sober. And that makes sense. So you've seen that, right? Like a lot of celebrities are sober now.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a bunch. They're like, it's funny. Sometimes I Google, I'm like, sober celebrities. And it's usually like the usual ones. They say like Kim Kardashian doesn't drink, like Blake Lively doesn't drink. I don't think Miley Cyrus drinks.
Right.
I think, and it's for different reasons. Most of them, I think it's like health reasons or they don't like the taste or whatever it be. I mean, no judgment in any case, but yeah, I think it's great.
It's great.
So.
Yeah. And I opened a bar in LA as a beverage director with there's some people that's a really great bar called Stay.
I've heard of it.
And it's really cool. It's entirely non-alcoholic. So you certainly see a lot of celebrities go through there. But so yeah, where can people find out more about you?
They can visit hilarysheinbaum.com. They can also follow me on Instagram, Hilary with 1 L, writes NY, or goingdry.co.
That's awesome. And please check that out. And thank you everybody for joining us today, but also thank you for your comments, for your letters, for your likes. I really thrive on those. And so I really encourage you, if you're enjoying what you listen to, please make sure to comment, make sure to like it. And otherwise, we will see you on the next episode. And until then, here's to drinking more mindfully.